So those cakes
Yeah,
not very...
they don't really make me hungry.
No. Well, let's hope the soldiers enjoyed them anyway. But time for a look now at today's international newspapers with our press reviewer, as I said, Elena Casas. The constitutional chaos in Egypt making headlines everywhere.
Yes, indeed. Egypt's parliament disbanded. Is it a coup then, or is it more regime bumbling and chaos? Headlines a piece over at The Atlantic. Now, they reckon that it's hard to see this as a really set-out planned coup by pro-Mubarak forces. It's probably more a case of them panicking and seat above their pants, bumbling and stumbling, working out what they're going to do next. Now, they say Mubarak always threatened that chaos would follow his fall. Didn't quite say that chaos was going to come from those forces that supported him, of course. He said it would be the Islamists and revolutionaries, but it looks really like it's the pro-army forces who are just finding it impossible to control the situation. They retain, of course, quite a large amount of power, but their attempts to hold on to power just are turning into a bad joke, they say in that article. They say, they're meant to be running on a platform of stability and law and order. Ahmed Shafiq, the sort of pro-Mubarak regime forces candidate, is meant to be telling Egyptians he's going to bring peace back to the country and reduce the crime rate and so on. But it looks like it's from those who are supporting him that all the chaos and instability is actually coming at the moment, ironically, they say. Now, over at Foreign Policy, though, they've got a rather harsher view on the situation. They say this is the end of Egypt's democratic transition. This is the end of its experiment with democracy, and the dictatorship that has gone on for so many decades there is simply going to continue. Very little will have changed from the Mubarak regime in a few months' time, they say, other than the man at its head, the mechanisms, the system remains in place, and that this democratic episode, this democratic parenthesis is now over. They say this is a planned coup attempt, and Egypt's last year of politics is now devoid of meaning. If a third of that parliament has now got to be re-elected, the legitimacy of the judiciary has just turned into a bad joke. If they keep making all these outrageous decisions, they say, well, they might change the decision and rule the thing constitutional again next week, but it hardly matters anymore because they've turned themselves into a laughingstock.
OK, well, so a pretty pessimistic article there. Anyone feeling a little bit more optimistic?
Well, over at The National, they are. They say that Egyptians should still go out and vote in this presidential election. We should still see them as having made some democratic progress, that there is still a real choice to be made, even if it feels like both candidates for the presidential election that are now still in the running would be a betrayal of the revolution to vote for, because you've got a conservative former Mubarak crony on the one hand and a conservative Islamist on the other. But they say Egypt has still come a long way. We shouldn't give up all hopes for its transition to democracy quite yet. El Aram, though, the Egyptian newspaper, reckons there's a secret agreement between the SCAF, the Egyptian army, and the Muslim Brotherhood for what they're going to do after this election. They apparently have rather fewer differences between them than the election campaign pitting their two candidates against one another would lead you to think. They, of course, have a lot of shared interests in peace and stability and in silencing, more than anything, the revolutionaries of Tahrir Square, they say there. So they say that those two groups have come to an agreement saying they're going to split the new parliamentary seats that will need to be re-elected after this constitutional court decision between one another, and effectively come to a power-sharing arrangement, which really would render, of course, whatever the Egyptian people decide to do on Sunday pretty much null and void if they've made an agreement already.
OK, well, we're going to move over to the UK now, because David Cameron, the Prime Minister, finally faced the Levis inquiry into press standards and ethics yesterday.
Indeed, one of my favourite subjects here at the Press Review is the Levison inquiry, which finally heard from the Prime Minister yesterday. Now, could have been more uncomfortable, really, for the PM than it was. The Guardian says today, can Cameron survive a grilling from the Levison inquiry? Yes, he can, is their headline. Now, yes, he can was the Sun's headline in 2009, just after Cameron gave a speech to the Conservative Party conference. Now, from a text that Rebecca Brooks sent to David Cameron in what was probably the most cringeworthy moment of the hearing yesterday, when that was revealed to the Prime Minister, we can see that she decided on that headline with him the day before, something that they, of course, deny, having come to any agreements about anything secretly about the Sun's coverage. The whole of that text is there on the Guardian, and it has some quotes in it that have been picked up widely by the press, including them talking about having a country supper together and her talking about how charming all of his old Etonian friends are. The worst part, though, for Cameron is when she says we're both in this together, this being, of course, his election to the job of Prime Minister. That shows everyone is saying just how deep the collusion was between the two of them. Not only did they share country suppers in rather rarefied social circles, but they also shared a great deal else. If you look at the Guardian's cartoon there, they've got her as Medusa, her famous red hair all over David Cameron there, and a little Andy Coulson, of course, the former Director of Communications of his, peeping out of the top. The Independent has gone for Camnesia as a front page headline today, because they reckon he used the I don't remember a great deal more than anything else yesterday as a defence at Levison, and their cartoon has him as a horse eating from a nose bag with the sun on it, so obviously they don't think that his assertions that he didn't come to any kind of agreement about their coverage with Rupert Murdoch is not very credible.
OK, thanks very much indeed, Elena. More, no doubt, from the Leveson inquiry in the days and weeks to come as well. Thanks very much for that.